Helen Marx, welcome to Real Insight. It's been a while. You're one of the guests that I've been trying to get for a long time. There's been a couple in the past few weeks that have been guests I've been working on forever, and they've finally decided to come through. So welcome.
Thank you.
Currently, I'm going to let you do the intro because the job description doesn't make total sense to me, but COO. CCO.
Yep.
For?
So chief, CCO, CIO, COO. I've had quite a few of the C titles.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that you say it doesn't make sense. It's a lot of the guys, even when they take me to meetings, like, can you just introduce yourself? Because it's just too hard.
Yeah.
It's technically commercial, CCO.
Yep. Because you're of a marketing lineage, is that right?
Marketing and sales.
Yeah, okay.
The software piece of my career got me into that kind of IT, ops, transitions, understanding, simplifying, automating.
Yep.
And now I've kind of come full circle and I'm back more involved in brand acquisition, brand growth, sales channels, looking at the business as a whole.
Because you've really been instrumental in this new sort of evolution of particularly the CMI brand. Sure. And the Australis brand, am I right?
Yeah, so I've been just on 9 years with the group. Started at Australis, as I said, as the IT portion, so the CIO portion of that.
Mm-hmm.
We got bought by our new owner end of 2021.
Yep.
Straight away went into due diligence to buy a CMI.
Mm-hmm.
That came on 4 months later.
Quick.
Very quick. I'm starting to look grey.
Yeah.
4 months later. And then I actually relocated to Melbourne to put the systems in, really invest in the business. We spent, close to probably $750,000 pretty quickly to put new laptops, new servers, new systems, the whole shebang.
Yep.
So I got moved down for that and then kind of evolved into the role that I'm in now, which is partnerships and figuring out how to create this ecosystem for an industry that I think in some parts is broken.
Been broken for quite some time.
And I think we're in a very interesting position where they've got musical instruments that allows the artists in our world to be creative and tell their truth and sing what they want and play what they want. It's a very emotion-driven business. Through to the pro audio that's then played through, connecting that with the venues and production companies and trying to actually build something that works.
Yeah.
Where everyone's not sniping off everyone else, where everyone's not cutting corners. If I have to see another musical event that's held in a conference room, I'm literally going to blow my brains out. It's just ridiculous. Why are venues not being used for what they should? Why are we not supporting them, especially after COVID?
Well, it's been crippling for that part of the industry. I've got a lot of friends, as we both would, that are in that in that industry. And it's interesting to see that, we expected that when we came back from COVID, there was going to be this massive uptick and everyone was going to race back to entertainment and events were going to be bigger and better than ever. But something shifted, and whether or not it's the psyche of the people, I'm not sure, but we're still seeing major events fail or not return.
Splendor's the latest one.
Yeah. From your angle and the stuff that you see, do you understand why this is happening? Is there anything that you see that we don't, that is choking this industry? I know that insurance is a massive issue. I know that
absolutely,
the cost of insurances has gone through the roof.
And I think what happened to Blues Fest? 3 days pre it actually supposed to be going ahead? 2 years ago?
Yep.
That was a massive shockwave through the industry. Huge. Live venues weren't live for nearly 18 months, or they were very restricted in their caps that they could have on. You're allowed to go, but you can't dance. Yeah. Don't stand up.
Why am I going to go out?
Okay. So I think post that, those that could still fund great entertainment did really well because we all came out of it super hungry for experience, for population around us.
Yeah, that's right. Just to be back.
And then something shifted again. And look, we all know what the actual just economy is right now is crippling for so many people and businesses. We're seeing retailers go out of business. Sam Ash announced end of last week, 100-year-old business.
Yeah.
Now I've got my theories about why, but, for them, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere, and it's making people nervous.
It's been happening, and it's been happening for too long in the sense of, so my history goes back to my first gig out of uni. My first corporate gig was with the Australis Music Group.
Yeah.
And that was when it was still the Australis Music Group. It had gone through a couple of different sell-offs, and then it was eventually purchased by two guys in venture capital that had done some pretty good successful stuff with brands before. Not musical instruments as such. And I think if you look at that again, there's a couple of things that happened. One was they tried to sort of model the Guitar Center model, right? Everyone thought the Guitar Center model is the way. So it's a rack 'em and stack 'em sort of shop, and you got everything from your $49 guitar right through to your $75,000 guitar. Let's make that happen. And it sort of didn't resonate with the Australian market, and I think they saw a massive tail off. Then that company merged with what was then Billy Hyde. It was actually part of a bigger organisation called the Australian Music Group that had Music Link. And a lot of the brands that you guys are dealing with now are brands that we had at Music Link. But the same thing, trying to be everything to everyone, trying to make it a cash and carry sort of adventure, and it lasted 6 months and the whole thing imploded from imports right through to retail. And I think it's because you can't sell music instruments to musicians as if you're selling, bread to the family.
Yeah.
It's a passion-driven type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, in the situation we are now as a larger group, we're often compared to that. And we're often given don't
Be
make
careful.
the same mistakes. Yeah. It's like, we got it.
Yeah.
And look, the industry's small. Like I started in consumer electronics, again, a relatively small industry, right? Everyone kind of knows everyone. Everyone shifts around within that industry, especially when you're past maybe 2 to 5 years in.
Yep.
You generally swap between brands or vendors or integrators, and it's been interesting watching that, and then all of these warnings coming in. And that's not just inside Australia. That's obviously a great example.
Yeah.
But it's happening in Chile. It's happening in France. It's all over the place. And we're seeing a lot of people trying not to make the same mistakes to varying levels of success.
I think from an external observational point of view, the one thing, and I haven't, admittedly in the business that we're in now, we don't necessarily engage a lot with Australis because that is a bit more, MI based.
Sure.
But CMI have been, a friend of ours for many, many years. The one thing I think that's very obvious with the CMI collection, because I'm familiar with most of that crew, is I always say this, the level of passion that you can see within the team is the thing that gives me the confidence to know that it's on the right direction. Particularly folks like Lee, Trav, I could probably rattle off other names, but, it hit me at Integrate last year when I walked into your little room, and it was just...
Now, hang on, our little room.
Your big room.
Come on.
Your big room. Your big... It was 2 rooms.
Yeah, well...
and it was super impressive stuff. I'd walked the whole floor for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then stepped into where you guys were set up, and it was just like one thing after the other of knocking your socks off. And I think that is what we don't do in trade shows anymore. Like, here's a new box. And
it's something we're literally talking about right now because we're doing an event around kind of JBL, but spatial immersive, which I know is right up your jam.
Dude.
You're the only person we played like a custom track.
Yeah, I know. I get to request.
It's so terrifying when you do that because you've set up the room and you kind of everyone thinks you just always play the same tracks, but it's so room dependent. And I've learned so much from the guys you've just talked about, plus the rest of that team as to how important that setup is. But when someone walks in and goes, "Hey, can I get you to play?" You're like, "No."
Yeah.
No, you can't, because I don't know what that sounds like in here. And we did it. And look, I think it was great. And we actually have a hilarious internal fight over what songs we're going to play. Because if I have to hear Sarah McLachlan one more time,
there's a couple of songs.
I know it's a go-to and it has been for a very long time, but
still,
come on.
Yeah, there's a lot more music that's been written since that mixes just as well. And that's the other thing too, is that people in our industry fall in love with the 4 or 5 test tracks that they know and love, and every trade show just bombards you with them. So mix it up, folks.
But it's also just how you present the information, right? Like, we've literally just kind of sat there. Well, the guys have. I shouldn't take credit for it. The guys have just sat there and gone, how can we do this differently? Everyone does it. You walk in, someone drowns you in PowerPoint, hopefully well and not too bad. And then you go through the series of tracks that you always listen to, and it's such a premeditated way.
Yeah.
And the guys are trying to completely spin that on its head. And that was part of what we did last year at Integrate. And it's great to get that feedback because I thought it was pretty cool.
It's amazing.
And just the way they set up the room and split it. And, we had Fletcher, we had, this immersive go at spatial with JBL, and not just with one series, but multiple series all hooked up. And it was exciting. Like it was phenomenal. I was excited again. And after walking Integrate, like yourself for a few years, you're just like, ugh, same old, same old. Yeah, new products, and some of it's really cool. But come on.
Yeah. And we're hearing about new products throughout the whole year. Like, it's not like it used to be. 20 years ago, a trade show had a different set of values because you didn't know what was out. And you'd go to the trade show and you'd see everything that happens for the next 12 months. We hear it now the day that it launches. So in order for trade shows to continue to have that level of impact, they need to have impact. No one's going to jump on a plane and go and fly there to read a brochure that the same rep is going to bring back to me in 4 weeks and shout me a lunch anyway. So, if you're going to integrate in 2024, do something amazing on your booth. Like, get people's socks blown off again, because that's why we want to go to these things.
Yeah. And hopefully we can take it to a new level this year again.
I'm sure you will.
On both sides of the fence too. Like, there's some really cool stuff at Australis now too. So,
do you come from a musically creative background or an arts background? No. So what has that been like, having the marketing and commercial skills that you've got, and then stepping into a field that is a unique sort of field, right? It's a bit different to selling just everyday product. Was that a challenge for you? Has that been a learning curve? Are you on that curve?
The first question you always get asked is, what do you play? Because there's an assumption that you're in the music industry. Even by friends and family, they're like, oh, wow, you're in the music industry. I'm like, well, yes, but there's the primary piece of our business is moving a box from A to B. What's inside the box is sexy and it's really cool. But the reality is, it's still, we're moving boxes. So there's an element of, we're driving emotion, but we're running a business, which I think has always been something that some people get, some don't. When people apply to us for a job, it's, I play guitar.
Yeah.
Like at the top of the sentence. I'm like, cool.
That's good if we're trying to build a band. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, it helps in some positions, absolutely. Sales wise, if you know the product, great. But what else?
Yeah.
So I always wince when someone asks me that question, because I don't, not well in any way.
Say the recorder.
Well, yeah, I mean, recorder, clarinet, all the normal shit that a girl does at school, I guess. Piano. Like, I've done things over the time, but nothing specific now. I own guitars. I don't play them.
And it doesn't matter if you don't play. Like, I'm not a player. My background was not playing. I have a brain that, can't concentrate on things long enough to learn how to play something well.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with studio production. The only reason I'm here is because I worked out that I can use software to make music quicker and easier without having to learn how to play.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the studio stuff. So you don't have to be a player. Having an appreciation or an ear for music or a passion for music is, that's plenty.
So I came from photographics originally. I started as a marketing coordinator for Fujifilm.
Wow.
Back when digital cameras were kind of coming online.
Yep.
Kind of firsthand watched the demise of Kodak in some respects, which I find all those kind of case studies like Kodak, Nokia fascinating. Sony was the brand that was really dominating at the time, and we came in, we ran the first kind of direct-to-consumer promotion Fujifilm had done, and it was you buy a camera over $399 and you get a free DVD player.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty cool.
At the time, that would have been a thing.
That was major, yeah. And it was the first time that we'd ever beaten out Sony in terms of market share, December, January sales period. A year later, I was in sales and doing channel management, learning from, having gone through those marketing campaigns and what actually motivated the buyers, motivated the store guys, how to implement spivs properly and all those kind of things, because it was brand new back then. No one was really doing it.
Yeah.
And that's obviously led through everything else, and it's something we're doing today in a very different model. But I love photography. I loved that side of it. I'd make all the sales tools and show why cameras were better and what the lenses did and what dynamic range was. And so I always enjoyed the technical part of whatever I'm kind of involved in. And that carries through to today, where I'm learning constantly, especially when it comes to the pro audio side.
Yeah, well, you're right in the technical beast of the belly out there, with both brands in particular. Yeah, that's full on. What do you think needs to happen over the next couple of years in our industry for it to be sustainable? And when I say it, and this is for the people that are listening, our industries in a Venn diagram would overlap, about 60 or 70%. So we're talking about like commercial AV and installed audio stuff that lives there permanently and lives in the building. And then, things on sticks, speakers, touring stuff, whatever. Looking at that as a whole, what are some of the things that need to happen in order for us to be able to continue this way? Because businesses are failing, integrators are struggling, employment's up and down. We're ramping up for big projects, then project goes away and we have to let people go. What can we do as an industry to be more evolved?
Great question.
You can think about it. There's no rush.
From an like retail MI perspective first, I think sometimes we forget that we are in the game with discretionary spend, and that's clothing and it's Nike and it's like there's so many categories. It's travel, it's experiential, and when it comes to product and we're in this discretionary spend race, if you look at like the websites we have in our industry compared to Iconic, Adore Beauty, like the other discretionary spend categories, we are way behind. And if you can't even combat and beat out those kind of things at the starting point, to just get someone to consider to buy a musical instrument or a speaker or a pair of monitors or some studio gear and be creative over buying some clothes and shoes and lipsticks. And
I've never thought about it like that.
If we can't even get there, problem number one.
Yeah.
Experiential wise, you're competing against travel. And after COVID, everyone wants to travel, or everyone wants to improve their house, because God knows it's hard to sell and buy a new one right now.
Yeah.
So we've as a bigger ecosystem, I think we forget sometimes what the industry is actually competing against and how we need to throw ourselves forward to be able to do that properly.
Yeah, that's a gem, because I've never thought of it that way. I view it, I've always viewed it in the sense that, say me as the consumer of these wares, is that I'm super passionate, I'm super well educated. Like there's not many musicians that are walking into musical stores and not knowing what they want.
Sure.
They've got it nailed down to
They're
a couple.
normally better research than the guys in the store.
Yep. They'll know the price. They'll know how much it costs if I buy it here versus if I ship it in, and duties and all that stuff. They'll be informed with all that information.
Absolutely.
And then what I've found is that when you go into the music store is often it's as if the people that are in there are still working in the cottage industry of 50 years ago, but they're doing it in a big, high street store. And that's where it falls over, because you've got one opportunity to convert that person that's in that store, and you're going to have to do it based on knowing they know more than you.
Even if you get them in the store in the first place. Yeah.
So tell me about that. What do you see? Because again, if I go back to when I was with Australian Music Group, they were nowhere near ready for what online was going to do to them. They thought, guitars are too big to ship. People will never import their own musical instruments. It just won't happen. Are you seeing, like, where do you see the market share between people still shopping in person and just doing it all online? Do you guys get to see some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. During COVID, I think it was a great accelerator, obviously, of just the general consumer shopping online, because they had to. So I think that accelerated things considerably. We used to estimate online being in a good store with a good website, like 10, 15%. It obviously went to 100. It's kind of dialed back to, the top guys are probably 40, 45, maybe even 50% online, but most of it's like 20, 25, depending on what state too.
And depending on the equipment, I would imagine. Like there's some stuff. If
Yeah,
you
like
need
studio gear and DJ gear and those kind of things, far more so.
Yeah.
Because it's less tactile.
Yep.
Guitars, depends what price range. You know, if you're looking at custom shop or a Murphy Lab Gibson or, you know, J Custom Ibanez or
It'll never
custom
happen.
shop ESP, you know, from Japan, some of those, I mean, they don't even go on the wall. They're literally made to order. You wait 9 to 10 months. One of the most ridiculous stories that is actually true is, especially during COVID again, we waited very long times for guitars, high-end guitars. And
You mean for stock?
To even come into the country.
Yep.
And there was this Gibson container that was so important, and it had some guitars we'd been waiting on for 12 to 14 months, major some issues happening and all that kind of thing. And it was just, we need to get this container. And we kept getting ETAs pushed back. Everyone's getting really frustrated. Finally gets on a ship, goes through the Suez Canal, and gets
So when they were blocking the Suez Canal and holding ships ransom or something?
The crew killed the, I was going to say driver, the captain.
No.
Because there was contraband on the ship and he found out, and then it sat at the wharf for like 3 to 4 more weeks.
No.
Because the police obviously cordoned off the ship and couldn't go anywhere because the crew killed the captain. Brand manager comes to the table and he tells the story and we're all like, seriously, when's the container arriving? And he like pulls up the article and I'm like, come on.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and people don't see that side. And then you go out and you try and tell the stores that, let alone them telling their customers that.
Yeah.
They look at you like you're a psycho. But that kind of thing happens.
You survived it. The stock arrived eventually?
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
We've also, like, you've had containers turn up where cases have been ripped open and obviously something's been taken out. We've had stuff turn up with, you know, guitars missing. It's just, it happens.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
Even if it's locked, even if, like, we're cutting deadbolts off some of these things just to try and make sure they arrive.
Have you ever had any issues with people trying to hide contraband in any of your shipments? Because that's always one that is interesting depending on the country that it comes from.
We did have a container that turned up that they obviously hadn't cleared. And there was these little pill bottles in there.
Yep.
And we were joking around and like spin the bottle as to who has to take one to see what it's like, see what it is. But yeah, I had to call customs. They came and got it off us and you know, had to obviously work back through that process as to what, I don't know what it was. We never found out, obviously. They didn't tell you. But yeah, absolutely.
Sort of stuff happens.
Yeah. But nothing like the crew killing the captain.
No, well, that's a once-in-a-lifetime story. And I suppose if there's any story that you can tell other than the ship sinking, that's probably a pretty good one.
We have had container fall off. Container fell off a ship. So we've had that. Thank goodness that was a bit of a cheaper brand. But yeah, we have had containers fall off ships before.
It happened at Crestron once in the peak of COVID where you couldn't get their UC engines. So that was the thing that everyone loved from Crestron. And yeah, they managed to get like one shipment happening and apparently the crates just fell off into the ocean. Like, yeah, good. Wasn't meant to be. I don't want to turn this into a women in business conversation, but it's a necessary conversation to have because, you know, you're at a level in business, particularly in an industry that is very male dominated. You know, it's a 9-to-1 sort of ratio.
All the industries I've been in have been.
Yeah.
Consumer,
and so I want
electronics, IT.
I want to sort of step through a little bit of that journey in particularly, I think the things I'd like to capture from a story like that is going into it. Did you think it was going to be hard and challenging? When it did become hard and challenging, if it did, how did you push through it? And then sort of getting back to what advice would you give to folks that are going through a similar battle? You know, how do you keep your voice being heard amongst the boisterous old men of the industry?
It's been different in the different stages, I guess, and ages of being in these different industries. You know, when I started in consumer electronics, there was, I'm horrified to even say this, there was a hit list of the girl reps.
Yeah, right.
And like finding that out, seeing the list on the back of someone's door was like, is this actually happening? Am I being punked? Surely not. And that's way back, you know, early 2000s, I guess. right through to in software, I've turned up for a meeting and I was one of the top reps for the piece of software I was doing. And I've turned up to meetings and literally had someone walk out and go, nah. And I'm like, excuse me?
Really?
And he went, I'm not taking advice from you. Don't bother.
Far out.
And I was just, again, you've got to be kidding. Genuinely. So I've had, I guess, different experiences in different industries. I've been told I'm too young. I'm a woman. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I just, like I said to the one guy, I was like, well, why'd you call?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, well, when I saw Helen, I thought maybe you'd be older. I'm like, what's that got to do with it? But literally turned away. Meeting didn't even start.
Yeah.
So I don't think you ever think that's going to happen. And honestly, I think some movements and some conversations have gone so far the other way that some women have become so hardened and almost have a chip on their shoulder because of it. And that I don't think's healthy either. I want to prove my worth from my results and doing what I do well. Yep. And that's a massive drive for me. That meeting where he turned me away because I was young and a female has kind of driven me into, I know everything about that piece of software. I know it back to front. I can consult on that piece of software. I can configure it. That's why my demos were always so specific, because I got it and I wanted to. And that kind of continues into this now. I'm not a musician. I'm not an audio engineer, but I have a great passion for understanding.
Yep.
And I think most of the time I get away with it. But hopefully it drove me in the right way, where I enjoy being a leader, not just because I'm a girl. I enjoy seeing other women succeed in business.
Yep. And
I think a lot of women need to hear that and be reminded of that, because going the other way too far is just as bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that it's always a tricky thing. I mean, I don't understand why there isn't more females in STEM fields, and, I can't solve that issue personally, but whenever there is, trying to platform them and give them a level of comfort to succeed is always something that I've tried to do. And there's some really good stories where that's happened. I think the thing that is always a trick for women, it's once you start getting to middle management is really that, I think that's where the ceiling is probably its heaviest, right? Because now you're actually a threat to some of the men that have been sitting in that top tier for so long. And so in those elements where you're finding that you might be getting drowned out or your ideas aren't necessarily being taken seriously, is there any practical advice, that worked for you? We're not here to solve the world's problems, but some simple sort of tricks. Is it
being over prepared?
Yep.
Just knowing your numbers, knowing why, not throwing out flippant ideas, because the more you do that without the backing, the more you do get pushed to the side, because they can say, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So I always felt I need to be over prepared. I need to have thought my ideas through. I need to have reason. I need to have a business case. And, perhaps sometimes that makes me take too long, because you're so intense on making sure that you kind of come in from the right direction with the backing that you need to be reasonable. And at that point, if you're still not being listened to, you're not in the right place.
Yeah.
There has to be a point where you're just not in the right place.
Do you need a mentor? Is that something that you think is important? Be that a male or a female mentor, but
I actually don't necessarily have one.
Nope.
I've certainly had people in my career that have taken that role at different times, and have shaped me for sure. But I don't think it's necessary if you're driven and you know where you want to go, or at least how you would like to proceed.
Yep.
Wherever that takes you. I think it can absolutely be beneficial, but needing it, no.
Do you think it's very important to know where you're going? Is that?
I think it's important to have an idea of where you'd like to get to. I always said I want to be CEO before I'm 40.
Yeah.
That changed years ago for many reasons. But having that as the medium to long-term goal certainly shaped how hard I went at things.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, but it can't define you either. and can't stop you from just sometimes taking a bit of a ride and seeing where it goes.
I wanted to be CEO for ages too. And I think, the more you realize what the role of a CEO is, particularly if you're connected to a passionate part of the industry, if you're marketing or development or whatever it might be, CEOs don't get to do a lot of that. Most of them is just damage control, media stuff, and trying to keep the image of the business nice. I still want to do things.
Yeah,
I still want to do things that are practical and create things. So yeah, I'll sit here. Thanks. No need for CEO for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to chat something a little bit more personal, if we can move into that, because this is
I wish there was vodka.
This is we can get some vodka. This is such a cool story. It's such a cool story. It's such a unique story. It's something that I didn't believe for the longest time. But yeah, you last year, September had a baby, but it's not that black and white. Can you tell us why it's so colourful?
Give you the abridged version.
Yeah.
Kids weren't necessarily a thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've mentioned this to you. Like, I am quite okay with saying, for potentially selfish reasons, I felt like that wasn't a path I potentially needed to travel. In terms of having my own children, I have nieces and a nephew. Like, I had that kind of tickle around the edges of my life, and that was great.
The fun
Love
auntie,
kids.
the fun auntie role. Yep.
Going shopping, all those kind of things. But it wasn't necessarily a thing for me, and I was fine with that. Not because I didn't think I could do it with my career and all of those kind of just generalizations people like to apply. So I got quite sick last year. At the time, honestly, I thought it was stress. And then I thought it turned into gastro. And I was going to the doctor a lot. I was having people, do tests on me. I was responding to medication. But, essentially got diagnosed with extreme IBS and stress-related things.
Yep.
Working long hours. Got told to kind of dial it back. Went to integrate, traveled all over the world. I did Japan, I did NAM in US. I'd just been to Cairns. Went to integrate. First trade show I'd done in a while, and holy hell was I not trade show fit.
Yeah. And integrate's a big trade show.
It's 3 days. Yeah. We didn't have seats really in our small room.
Medium room.
So you're on your feet. I was actually in like wedge heels.
Yeah.
And you go to dinners at night, it's very enveloping.
It's a 14 to 15 hour day for most people that are there, and it's 3 days back to back.
Yeah. So end of day 2, I messaged my other half and went, feet are really swollen. When I get back to the hotel, I'm just going to put them up for half an hour and then I'll go and do the dinner and blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh yeah, okay, no problem. That's a bit weird for you, but okay, it's trade show, first trade show for a while.
Yeah.
He then actually flew to New Zealand to see his family and see his kids and everything. And I just didn't feel right the next week. I just, I thought I'm really tired, like I've really overdone it. And I was having these stomach cramps and I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, it's just going to be horrendous. And I couldn't sleep, like literally could not sleep even if I tried. So I was putting a hot wheat bag on my stomach and just was like, no, I need to go and see the doctor. Like, something's really wrong. Maybe I've got a stomach ulcer. That increased in intensity, and these stomach cramps getting worse, getting more consistent, not stopping. And 36 hours in, I'd done pregnancy tests and they'd come back negative.
Yeah.
Because I was like, maybe that is what it is.
Yeah.
Realistic. But I wasn't full belly, like I hadn't popped. I just put on weight.
Yep.
And was uncomfortable. I was only eating sashimi, doing everything basically you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And on Sunday, I was speaking to my friend and I was like, no, I'm really not good. And these stomach cramps aren't stopping. And she was like, go to the hospital. So I Googled, when can you go to the hospital? Stomach cramps, pain, bleeding, all these, this list of things. I'm like, yeah, check.
Me.
This one, this one, that one, maybe this one. And then how do you call an ambulance? because being from New Zealand, it's 111. Here it's 000. UK it's 999. So I actually Googled that. I feel stupid saying it now, but I did. Called an ambulance. And when I was on the phone to them, they were like, oh, it's going to be about 50 minutes. And I went, I don't have 50 minutes. And I actually cramped right in the middle of it. So they turned up in 20. Rushed me to hospital, got into the emergency department, and was on, the little green whistle.
Oh, yes.
I love the green whistle. That was amazing.
It's a bonus for anyone that ends up in a situation like that, yeah.
And the ED doctor came over and she went, look, I'm just gonna scan your stomach because something's not right. Maybe it's an ulcer, burst, whatever. And she went, and I was like, what? Holy shit, it's cancer. Like, I'm in big trouble here.
Yeah.
And she went, I don't know how to tell you this. And then just swung the screen around. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
And I literally screamed, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And went into full panic, full anxiety, shock, just uncontrollably
Been like you'd be looking at
crying.
something that wasn't you. Yeah.
And she went, that's what's coming today. You're 4 centimeters. You're nearly halfway through labor. And it's coming today.
And you're like, right, let's do this.
I'm alone. I don't have a lot of family in Australia in general.
Yeah.
So I got my phone out. I had it on me. I got my phone out and said, can you call my friend Janine? She'd literally just newly minted midwife, if you can imagine the
perfect timing.
Yay. Tried to get her. She didn't answer. Tried to ring her husband. She answered on his phone. And the nurse, with me sobbing like a walrus in the background, goes, you need to come to Royal Women's now. Helen's about to give birth. And she'd seen me like 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah. Like, ow.
I had 14 hours from them swinging that screen around to an emergency C-section.
That is out of control.
And having a baby boy.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
But being that it was something like I couldn't believe it because I'm asking myself, like, I'm not a woman, but I'm asking all these obvious questions. I'm like, but wouldn't, So, aside from all that, what a life. And literally, in the case of like people say that having a baby is a life-altering thing, and it is a life-altering thing, but it's a life-altering thing when you never expected it to be in your life. Not only did you, because some people fall pregnant. Like,
sure.
Yeah, okay,
Absolutely.
well, I'm pregnant, and we go through that journey. For it to happen like that, what's going through your mind? Like,
the next day, because obviously I hadn't had any of the scans, I hadn't gone through all those processes. They were obviously doing them all straight after he was born, right? Checking for everything.
Yeah.
So they put him in like the NIC unit. So obviously didn't have him in the room. I was on a Teams call the next day in my hospital bed.
Good on you.
Nurse coming in and she was like, are you on a call? I'm like, yeah, do you mind if you come back? And she went, no.
That's not how it works.
I need to take blood from you. I need to take your blood pressure. And I was like, okay. Just tilted the camera a little bit because I hadn't told anyone.
Yeah.
I hadn't even told my parents.
And you would have been in that spot where your mind is just like in a survival mode.
I think ultimately that's what it was. It was shock. It was survival. It was, I can't deal with this right now.
So surround myself with what's familiar and just
I'm a workaholic at best. So, it was the familiar and known, and also I don't want to let my team down. I had meetings, and some of them were important meetings. It wasn't just simply like jumping on a sales call for the team. It was external meetings.
You could probably get out of a meeting for
delivering
a baby.
But at that stage, like I hadn't told anyone.
Yeah.
The only people that knew were Janine and her husband Brady, my partner Chris. Like that was it. So I didn't know. I didn't know what to do.
Was that a bit isolating to feel like that? Like, because normally if someone has a baby, it's it's news and everyone's celebrating and get everyone around.
And don't get me wrong, when Chris got back and when we kind of got our heads around it ourselves as a little family unit, if you will, then the phone call started and we had so much fun.
Yeah.
Because we're like, I haven't been well. Or like, I've ended up in hospital. And like, we had people panicking. And I'm not going to lie, it was hilarious. Because we'd then just turn the camera.
Yeah, well, that's what you did to me.
Yeah.
You were messaging me and being like, I've been sick for a while. And so I'm really trying to get back onto the show, but I've got a really good excuse. And then you just sent me a photo.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then the next time I saw you, I think was at the NTech Roadshow.
Yeah, it was,
I'm like, can you just please explain this to me in some way that I can understand it?
Yeah. And we, so we did a few video calls. We did a few phone calls that turned into video calls. It was, we did have a lot of fun from that perspective. And that probably broke the fear factor.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden we were absolutely surrounded by an outpouring of support. I still kind of tear up when I think about it. Like my team, even like most of it, they were turning up with things. Trav gave us his pram because Till was finished with it. Like it was unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. Because we didn't have anything. We didn't even have diapers. Like we had nothing.
Was that difficult? Was it difficult? Because again, I'm picturing a situation that you weren't ready for, right? So something that is a little bit of like, my mind just has to catch up with whatever's going on here. And then you're trying to adjust as you, but then everyone else is happy and celebrating and you're like, I don't really know how I feel yet. I just need some time with this.
Yeah.
Like, was that a difficult journey there as well?
Well, because of all the things that had happened as well, 48 hours later, we had a home visit to make sure that we were going to, be parents. So we had 36 hours to go out, buy stuff, get home, organize the house, which certainly was not set up for a baby.
No.
And get everything. It was survival mode.
Yeah.
I can't put it any other way. And then actually having people judge me a lot, like for not taking time off.
Yeah, something you mentioned earlier. Go on.
As a New Zealander, you actually, it appears in every respect, and don't hold the New Zealand thing against me. It appears in every respect that we are treated equally as like an Australian citizen, basically, because we can come and go, we can work here, it's all those things.
Yep.
But there are some things that are not reciprocal, like benefits or maternity leave and all those kind of things. So I actually can't have time off paid, which is one thing.
I can't imagine you would if you could anyway.
Did I want to? Maybe not. But it's still a reality of the situation while you're in that mode of not knowing how your life is going to rearrange or how you're going to cope. With a baby waking up every 4 hours. I don't even think I've ever held a baby that small. He was full term, by the way.
Yeah, right.
I was 41 weeks.
Far out.
I'm pretty sure it's on 8 pound. So it's called a concealed pregnancy.
Yeah.
So the abdominal wall doesn't break. That's why even if he was kicking, I wouldn't have felt it.
Yeah, okay.
It's why I didn't pop, because normally the abdominal wall breaks and your organs kind of move. So he or she
has
room to grow.
Yeah.
He didn't have any room. He was stuck behind the wall. But I got judged a lot for not taking time off. Even in the hospital, I got judged for not wanting to breastfeed.
Yep.
And I sit back now and I'm like, who the hell do you think you are talking to me when I'm 14 hours into this?
Yeah.
Let alone a few days later. But, I know that it's been asked, or how's she going to manage this? Or see the degradation or the slip that happens now because she's a mother.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's fair.
It's not at all. And it's one of those things that I think, I don't like to comment on it because it's not my place, but it's definitely one of those things where there's a difference between men and women in the sense of women will have children and men won't. But that doesn't mean that there's any less of a place in the business for a woman because a woman needs to go and have a child or raise a child, or might choose to have a child and maybe the dad's a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And, we got a situation here where one of our guys that they had a family and the mum's working and the dad stayed home, and that's fine. Like, what's the big deal?
Like I said to you earlier, I have been asked by previous employers, are you planning on having babies? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? It's like, well, if you were to, that would be quite interfering for the business. And I said to you, my ovaries don't send text messages.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an alert on everyone's phone. And second off, you can't ask me that.
None of your business. Yeah.
But that is actually a reality. It's still, there's a lot of judgment.
But how is it now? So now you're in motherhood.
Yeah.
And for someone that, wasn't expecting it and adjusting to it, like you obviously find the joys in it, right? There's things that you weren't prepared for that are probably more exciting than any of the dauntingness that came with it.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like awesome.
What's his name?
Elijah.
Hi, Elijah. You'll be watching this when you're old enough to watch stuff.
He is, we're incredibly lucky, and I can say that from having watched my brothers and sister-in-laws have children and having varying sleep, not being able to colic, like all of those kind of things. We haven't had any of that with him. So very lucky. Like he slept 10 and a half hours last night. I'm pretty pumped. He's pretty awesome. The first smile, like the first real smile.
Yep.
Broke my heart.
Yeah.
Like it's something that's just burned into my retina. He said his first word the other day, which was dada, looking at Chris. It was pretty cool. He's crawling, not crawling, commando crawling.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's fast. He has a penchant for cables.
Oh, good.
Putting them in his mouth.
Yeah.
Just everything.
Great.
Straight in.
Yeah, he'll be a roadie. He'll grow up to be a solid roadie.
No, we were talking about that the other day. I'm like, no, you won't. Definitely not. I've seen the.
Yeah, we know enough roadies.
Yeah, I've seen the hells that France and the guys go through at BHSS. That's, and he's just awesome. We fed him yesterday. He had his first taste of Vegemite.
Oh yeah.
Loves it. Literally crawled up me to try and take the bread out of my mouth to put in his.
So he's automatically an Australian?
No.
No?
He's actually not.
No?
He's actually a Kiwi.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, tell him about the Vegemite. That'll seal the deal. I feel like he's no Kiwi.
And he had chicken korma last night.
And having caviar and crayfish tonight.
Yeah, I must admit his face kind of went with the korma because I think it was a little bit hot. But he'll literally eat off my plate. Like he's super cool little kid.
Yeah.
I took him into the office, a few weeks after I'd had him, and he literally disappeared with the guys.
That's one of the things you have to worry about. Yeah.
It's so cool. They take the bottle, gone.
And that's what you need in a situation like that, because how would you know what to do?
Well, it's like that whole thing, it takes a village. It actually felt like that.
Yep.
And it was incredibly humbling.
And that would have been super cool for you, because I imagine, your tendency to slow down in situations like that is probably non-existent or at least very limited. Have you been able to find a balance, or is that something you're still working on?
Definitely still working on it.
Yeah.
I got to go home at Christmas, and he got to spend time with his brothers and sisters and his cousins and my family, and my family's incredible with him, right through to my nieces and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of actually got my first break. It was liberating and made me realize how much I was still just running on adrenaline.
Yep.
So I think I'm finding a better balance now, being forced to almost, and being reminded of it when I need to be. But I think that's an evolving battle, and it will continue to be so.
Yeah, because you mentioned earlier that you're sort of in a spot where you are towing the line now between, moments of independence, but then those moments of independence also coming with some separation anxiety. So, that's a natural thing. Is that something, again, that is just a work in progress? Because how can you be
You don't realize it until it happens too.
Yeah.
So flying on the plane this morning, I'm like, I'm not going to see him for 40 hours.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get cuddles. It's, it does hit you in different situations when it's very unexpected for me. I didn't ever kind of expect to feel that. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to have a big bed. I can sleep till 7. I don't get my 6:05 alarm clock.
That's not happening.
But it's not happening. So I'm not going to be able to enjoy it the way I thought I would. But yeah, I think it's just you've got to evolve with it.
Yeah.
But there is still a certain element of just get on with it. You have to.
Well, I think you're doing an amazing job at it as far as maintaining the balance. From the outside anyway, it looks like a business as usual for you. You're a powerhouse anyway, so it's just, I suppose, one more thing that you have to try and fit under the belt.
Yeah.
What about if we go back to the wonderful world of CMI, Australis and the industry that we're in? What things can we expect? Is there any cool stuff that is happening? I know that you guys have recently merged facilities. Is that right? We had the old...
So we've implemented a warehouse logistics hub.
Yep.
Which will be state of the art in terms of practice, not industry practice, but worldwide practice of how warehousing and logistics should be done. All paperless, with scanners, with new MHE. It's designed purposefully. It's not something we've just had to move into. And the team has been really driven to get that right. And I actually, even though it's super nerdy, I actually find that stuff really exciting, especially when you've got a team that is excited about it with you. So it's a lot. I think there's 13,000 pallet spaces.
Yeah, wow.
And for those who have been to Brooklyn before, I think there's 1,800. So it's big jump.
Do you know how many SKUs that you end up with under this banner once it all comes together, roughly?
Not including spare parts, because that would just be too hard.
Yeah.
Probably about 15,500, 16,000.
Yeah, wow.
Spare parts would be over 20,000 just in spare parts.
Yep. Because CMI on its own was one of the biggest, like it was one of the big players, and we've seen like things like, God, if you go back far enough, I can't remember, Audio Products Group. Audio Products Group, that was acquired by Hills, that's right. And then...
That's gone to Amber.
Amber acquired both as part of that, yeah. So, yeah, it's just, the beasts that are absorbing all the other things. We are always just, please, keep the love there. Keep it all about the passion. I think that's one thing that's very clear with you guys. You'll be at Integrate this year.
Yep.
Yeah, anything...
The whole team,
cool
everyone.
Up there? Big room this year? What's the really big one?
We've got a stand and a room this year.
Oh, okay.
We're going all out.
Some spatial stuff. I imagine you'll be doing some more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's aware Harman bought Flux at the end of last year.
Did they?
After Integrate, Flux software.
Okay.
So that's going to be an interesting thing coming into the market. I think that really enhances kind of what we're looking at for the spatial and immersive stuff. There's some new brands coming.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things to talk about.
That's
a lot.
Cool. For you personally, this is a pretty epic part of your career. Do you look beyond this part of your career, or do you tend to be one of those people that goes, I am fixed where I am until that's no longer a thing?
I think I've learnt the hard way to just be in the moment, and that's been even probably more exacerbated by Eli. So right now, I'm just a lot of the strategies that we've been putting together and are starting to come to fruition now, and this is kind of the exciting part.
Yep.
A lot of the stuff like the venue and production partner network that we're trying to put together for the live side. How we work with artists better on the MI side, how we start to put that ecosystem together. A lot of it's coming together now.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a lot of fun.
That stuff I think is good. I think what a lot of brands forgot over the last decade or so is how important it is to promote, sponsor and invest in upcoming talented individuals. Yeah.
It's something actually I worked with Trad and Tyler at the Crowbar. When they did a refit and they put backline in and, it was there for everyone to use. So even the up and comers were coming in and using like world-class orange stacks and giving everyone that opportunity to play through a world-class system, mix on a HD96, train up the staff, flew DSR, train them up on the desk, and really changed the way I think that people were looking at the up-and-comers and the next gen and creating those kind of environments that they can really thrive.
Yeah.
And I think we hear all too often of artists that have been screwed over by the managers, or everyone's taking a clip. Like Trevor, I worked with for a long time at Australis as CEO. He built this spider web after talking to the guys from Northlane and other artists that we worked with and Northlane, the guys are awesome. And they talked about all the things that were involved, all the people that were involved in, from touring to merch to just the studios and publishing. And it was terrifying looking at this web. And I just think you hear those stories too often.
Yeah.
And then there's these platforms that have come out where they can launch their own music, but, that's held back by certain other things. And there seems to be like one little window being cracked and then a door's being slammed shut on the other side. So that's always informed us. And I guess the tagline was always to increase the participation in music.
Yep.
However that looks. And
so important. Yeah. So important, because the other byproduct, particularly, and I use this as an analogy to what happened with my career, and part of it is because of my condition. I just don't see things through, right? So I can never really get to the point of completing music a lot. But the awareness is the thing that I always say, if I had been aware of a music industry earlier, the fact that it's attainable, because I always thought you were born into a music industry, like you either had to have.
Well, a lot of it is who you know.
Correct.
Absolutely.
But what we lose by not having an industry, like if we lose live music venues and if we don't have performance.
Studios, yeah.
Yeah, and so kids can't see that as an opportunity of, here's somewhere that I can thrive, right? Here's a career for me. So then it starts to distinguish the up-and-comers that we've got. So I think we just need to really reinvest into making this industry as vibrant as it once was.
Yeah, it was interesting. Ron, who used to be at 301, through this, industry roundtable, if you will, and he got people in the room that, were producers, that ran music schools, that were from the government, trying to figure out how we get better programs into education. There were artist managers, there were brands, there was this collection in a room that he is one of the few people that could actually get into a room like this. And there were 10 tables of 10 people, and we sat there and we basically brainstormed how to get more people in, through, and progressing in the music industry. There's no course to be an artist manager.
There's not.
Every person that goes into production, all the jobs say you have to have 2 years experience, but no one will give you the damn experience.
There's no studios left. There's like 5.
Right. And it's all of those things. And we all sat there and just went, how the hell do we do this? And how does it start earlier? In high school, why don't we have that? I mean, the options now are way better than what I had, which was French, classical studies, or geography. Music production. Like, how does this work?
Yeah. There's another thing that I always think about in that situation. For about 10 years, I was a lecturer at JMC outside of hours, and did a couple of units down there. It was a great time, but I see maybe 50 or 60 students going through that course a year, graduating with degrees in either performance or production or business.
A lot of our guys are from JMC.
And that is the thing where I say that these courses in particular are missing out on a whole industry, which is the integrated solutions industry, the other 20% of the Venn diagram, where it's like, why aren't we teaching in these courses kids networked AV and, how to commission a video conferencing system and all these sorts of things, because we're sending these kids out of these courses. They've got all these qualifications that don't apply anymore, but yet there's an industry like mine that is starving for talent, and we can't get kids with any level of education because they're all pursuing careers becoming creatives. So I think to anyone that's coming out of those courses and you're looking for a place to go, integrated solutions like the AV industry or the UC industry, however you refer to it, like, reach out to us, please, because we are hanging out for young talent.
But it's also one of those things like, why aren't there more internships?
Yeah.
How is that program working? I remember Ron looking at how he did an RTO and how they got funding so that students can get loans to go into it, because it can be expensive. And when you're comparing that to other degrees where you can get student loans and assistance, we're literally the industry that is the creative industry, and we won't help them get in.
Yeah.
Those courses are $10,000, $20,000 depending where you do them.
Yeah, minimum.
And they don't, there's no support for them.
Yeah.
How are we even encouraging people to get in when there's no support, no junior roles, and no one knows how to get in?
Yeah.
I have that question a lot.
That's a good point.
How do we get in? Where's the door?
Yeah. We got some ads up on Seek at the moment for anyone that might want.
So do we.
Yeah. So anyone that's looking for jobs, there's plenty of them around. Just reach out.
Yeah.
To either Helen or myself. That's probably us coming up to the end of this thing. So that wasn't that bad. That was great. We had a ball. We're going to do this again because inevitably I think that you're going to have significantly more news for me in about 6 months' time. I just feel like there's so much cool stuff going on behind the scenes over there. So I really want to keep my finger on that pulse. Helen, you're a powerhouse of an individual out there. And I think your reputation in particular speaks for itself, but your reputation also precedes you. And there are seldom people that I speak to where I'm like, have you met Helen yet? And they're like, yeah. So you're definitely the type of energy I think we need in this industry to be able to influence some of that change, because it's all very much me too, same as type of stuff. And I'm stoked you're here, and I can't wait to see what you do.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for stopping by.